Welcome to Keep the Hotel Empty. Today we've kept the hotel empty for a special album deep dive with our good friends The Tilt. Today we're going to talk about the album they're releasing November 1st called The Long Game. I have been privileged to listen to the living hell out of this record for the last couple of weeks, and I'm super excited to hear from you guys about all the nitty-gritty. So I want to ask right away something that's probably a little bit cheesy, but you got to get it out of the way. What does the title The Long Game mean to this as the body of work?
I think there's like a lot of different meanings, and that's kind of why it sort of stuck as the title. I mean, the main thing is that, like, honestly, like the albums that we've done in the past, we've always done the title track as the first track. And then this one, when we wrote the last track and we realized it was called The Long Game, I think that we were just like, oh, this time it could be the last track. I don't know. I think that was the main thing. But then we started thinking about it and what it meant to us. And I think we all have a different thing. Like, there's so many angles to where you could look at it. One of them, I think the main one that stands out to me from just like the band standpoint is like that we're just going to be doing this forever. Like that, you know, we're not trying to just, I don't know, do like, you know, be a flash in the pan kind of thing and just sort of fizzle out. And I think that we all really, you know, we've known each other for a while and we've made music for a while and we just intend to do this for the rest of our lives as best as we can. So it's kind of like an homage to ourselves in that way.
Putting that statement out there.
Yeah.
This one's kind of like a blood oath or something.
Yeah.
Kind of like it's not the last one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So one of the things that I noticed right away before I even pressed play was this album is 14 tracks long. Mm-hmm. By today's standards, that is like beyond ambitious. In a time when it's way more incentivized to turn and burn a whole bunch of singles and then put out that as a record or whatever the case may be, what was your mentality like as a band when you set out? Were you purposely knowing, hey, we're going to write a record?
Yeah, I think so. I think like we do on this one, I think we did something which we hadn't really done before, which was like mapped out the album pretty much like before we had much of it written. Like we kind of figured out what roughly we wanted it to feel like. And that 14 track thing kind of came pretty early, that we knew we wanted to do something more ambitious than the last one, because I think we just have a habit of always wanting to do like whatever we just did, we want to do the opposite of it. So with the last one, we wanted to do something a little, I wouldn't say less ambitious, but just something a little more scaled down. It was kind of minimalist. It was like we were pretty inspired by like James Turrell and like minimalist art and stuff on the last one, and it was like there were like a bunch of little sketches, and the whole thing was only like 30 minutes. And
right.
We thought like, okay, well, the tiltiest thing to do at this point would be to just like do the opposite of that.
Yeah, I think we also talked about just having an album that had a bunch of like poppier bangers. Like that was kind of what we were talking about, and just having it be front to back, just good songs that we, instead of like, we had like 3 interludes in the last one, right? And they were all like ambient, and just fill it with, have less space kind of, and just make it a longer project.
And the first album, I mean, the last 2 songs on it were 20 minutes together. So yeah, it was like, let's cut all that, like all the 10-minute instrumentals and whatever, and just sort of let's see how many like hooky songs we can make in one go.
Awesome. Well, then let's dive into these songs, because they are much more songy, and for better or for worse, they are much more songy than your last effort. And I found that to make it so accessible that when I pressed play on the first track, I don't know if it was the first 3 times or the first 5 times I listened to the album, when I pressed play on the first track, I never pressed stop. I made it through the whole thing.
That's awesome.
Always, right out of the gate. So it was a little bit hard for me to start to pick out which song was which, because I was experiencing it as this whole, because each little bit kept leading me into the next bit. I never felt like I was partway through an album. I felt like I was at some point where something was coming next for me. So I want to try to to wrap my head around that and get your guys' take on this and share it for people who are hearing your record for the first time or who are going to listen to this and then go listen to the record. So the first track is called Black Sheep, Count Yourself to Sleep. I love that title. Why did you choose that one as the opener if you guys had this this habit of making the title track the opener? What about that one said this is how we're going to lead it off?
Well, we definitely knew that title was not going to be the album title when we wrote it. But you know what's funny is we wrote that song and the closing track in the same day. And it was like, I don't know, we always put a lot of emphasis on the opening track. Mm-hmm. Every time we've written an opening track, except for Up the Gospel, because that was an older song. But we kind of go into it like, let's write the opening track, like intentionally. And yeah, that one just like flowed out. Sawyer just started playing that guitar part out of nowhere. We were like, let's write the opener. And then Sawyer just started playing that and it was like, oh, okay, there it is. It was pretty easy.
Yeah, that one felt like super energetic. It kind of felt like it had all the pieces of the rest of it in there. So it was easy to call that one the opener.
Where were you at in the writing process? Had you written the bulk of the album to that point?
Yeah, that was the last couple of songs that we had, I think, was the opener and the closer we got at the end. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I think normally, it would be the opposite, right? Like,
right.
You
start with the beginning.
But yeah, I think we had like the sandwich ingredients and we just like needed to toast the bread.
The way to bookend it. So one of the things that stuck out to me right away in that track was, and correct me if I'm wrong here, was when the synth came in, and is it a DX7?
It's not an actual DX7, but what it is, it's very funny. You're talking about the watery kind of
yes.
Super Mario sound?
Yeah, like the Callistabel piano sound or whatever they call it.
So this keyboard, it's amazing. I don't actually know what kind of keyboard it is, but supposedly it was owned by Chick Corea.
Nice.
And all of the presets that are in there are like his presets. Like you can go in and see that they've been fucked with compared to like the original version of that keyboard. And yeah, our producer, he had done some like housework for Chick like years ago, I guess, and said that he bought that keyboard from him. And we were big Chick Corea fans. We'd play Magic the Gathering with our producer before recording and stuff. And we would play like Return to Forever like during our, and then he was like, oh, is this Chick Corea? And then he's like, I got his keyboard. So we've used that keyboard on every Tilt album, and that was one of the presets that was on there. And every like Rhodes sound that we get is also from that keyboard.
How important, or I should say, is it important that you have those like signature sounds that immediately get you, or is it just that it was purely happenstance? He has the Chick Corea keyboard, and we're gonna make use of it.
I think it's important. I think we try to pick wacky sounds, and sometimes we use the same trick a lot, but we add other stuff on there. And we definitely listened to a lot of the presets before picking that one.
Yeah.
But we knew we had to use that. It was just so cool.
That's
felt like a legend's hand had touched it, so you had to use it.
Yeah. And that preset specifically, like the underwater kind of vibe, it sort of tied in with the lyrics beforehand about growing our food underwater and living underwater, and it's like the year 3000 by the Jonas Brothers or whatever. So it just felt right to have the very underwater sounding keyboard come in right after that.
Well, and that's one of the things I wanted to ask about this song, that the bridge section, to me, it smacked of almost like a Jane's Addiction type thing, where it started to be very floaty, very airy, very spacey.
We haven't punched each other on stage yet, though, unfortunately.
Yeah, good. Keep that up. If you stay off the heroin and alcohol, it's easy to avoid. When you're writing a song like this, and you got a bridge part that's coming up, one of the things that I've noticed, and I definitely want to talk about as we go forward, but this song right out of the gate really exemplifies how you guys handle your middle eight or your bridge, and it doesn't seem like it's this part of the song that's just not like anything else that you've stuck in there to make it fit. In this song, that bridge section is pretty different from the rest of it, but it ties into it perfectly. and it really buttons it up nice. How do you guys approach that when you know you're going to make a hard left in a song and it's got to be cohesive somehow?
I think it's just like almost like one of our things that we just really like to do these days, to where we don't even think about it. Like, I think the first time we probably did that was on the song Shady Side on the first album, where it's just this like dreamy pop song throughout, and then out of nowhere the bridge is just like this I don't know, like 80s King Crimson kind of weird thing where Taylor's doing like a fretless bass solo and stuff. It was just strange. And I don't know, I just think that was really appealing, like when we struck that. And we've done that, I think, on almost maybe every bridge we've had, because I hate when there's a bridge and it's just like, here's the chorus but worse.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Or it seems like something forced.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It seems like this appendage to the song instead of part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the song could just be shorter and tighter if it doesn't need that, you know? So I think, yeah, like to me, that sort of section in a song where you go off into something else is something that when we're writing a song, we don't really even think of it as like going into a bridge or like we need middle eight or whatever. It's just sort of like a lot of times we're like, okay, we really like this verse and this chorus, but like I just feel like this song has some other thing to get across that we haven't found yet.
So how do you balance instinct versus maybe shooting all over your song? It should have a this, it should have a that.
I don't think we really want to or have to. I think a lot of times it's instinct, and if we want to control it later, we can, but I think it just feels so good to do what feels good.
Yes.
And that's how it starts.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
if there's control to it, it's kind of like trimmed up later.
Yeah.
So when you come to writing one of these different sections of the song that has a different feel to it, it really doesn't, I guess it doesn't have to fit right away. It just has to feel good. This is the criteria.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like, and you know, everything comes from playing together in the room. So if it doesn't feel good, then we just go like, oh, that doesn't feel good. Let's try something else.
So
Or
is
maybe
that
it
how-
doesn't need it.
Is that how you approach your writing almost always organically in real time together?
100%. Yeah. There's not a single song. Well, oh no, now there is. There's one single song we've done in another way than that, but pretty much everything we've written is in the room together, just sort of bouncing ideas off each other or just like jumping into a jam and not really thinking about it. And this was kind of a combination of both. Black Sheep was like, I just remember it being so, like, Sawyer just started playing that and it was like, oh, there it is. There's the opener, like immediately. And then it took a little while actually to like figure it out how to play it because it goes into that weird times section. And like, it took a little while to get it under our fingers once it was there. But like, I remember it just coming together really, really naturally.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a great song. It's a great way to open the record.
Thanks.
So let's move on to track 2, Growing a Tail. I guess I have some questions I want to ask about this, but the very first thing I want to ask is about the video. The video, for anybody watching this that hasn't seen the video, go check it out. The video is awesome. Tell me a little bit about how the video, or if the video, is a representation of the song, or if it was just meant to be a visually interesting counterpart.
I think it's almost funny how literal and on the nose it was.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
But it's kind of nice though to have something that's maybe a little bit cute and like on the nose. It's nice that it's not like just flashing colors the whole time. And it was a lot of fun to make. We had to do all the costumes ourselves, and it looks. I'm proud of it. It looks expensive, but it wasn't that expensive. You know, we used what we had. We used the office that you had access to, and
We used Oscura.
made it into a show, and it was just really, really fun to put together.
Nobody got paid. No, I'm kidding.
Everybody got paid in the friends they made.
What was funny is, like, I'm very glad that we made that a video because we've been playing that from the beginning. Like, that is the song from which this album was kind of built. It was the song that, before this album, like any other song, we had been playing that one live since we started, really. That's like, it just never had a home. It didn't fit on the first record. It didn't fit on the second one. And so we were like, and people were asking us, when is Growing a Tail going to come out? And we kind of thought like, okay, we've already talked about kind of the direction we want the third one to go in. Does Growing a Tail fit on that? I think it does. And that kind of like pushed us in other directions. But I never would have thought of all the songs that we did on this record, that would be the one with the video. Like, it doesn't have a chorus. It's a strange song to be the one with the video, but it was one where we did it, and Spencer, who records us, our engineer and producer, he also makes videos, and he has a very imagistic mind, and we were sitting there eating tacos on our break between recording it like we usually do, and he was just like, man, I could see us doing a video for this one where you're just growing a tail or something. Like, I don't know. I just probably started like that.
Turned into a monster.
Yeah. And we have these conversations with him like all the time. Like, this is not the first video idea he's thrown randomly in a session. And this was just the first one where we were like, yeah, let's follow through with it. Let's do it. And we did. It's cool.
It's so awesome. It's a great, fun video. Like I said, if anybody watching this hasn't seen it, go watch it. We'll put a link, then come back. Well, one of the things I wanted to ask about this song is starting off with the lyric, "At the bottom of the barrel ain't a miracle." And I noticed one thing that kind of repeats throughout your album. There's a lot of what I call mantra lyrics, where the lyrics repeat and it builds either off of it or builds around it. So I would like to ask what that lyric means in context and what you guys find, I don't know, necessarily important, or what you find interesting about using I've got no other way to put it, the mantra lyric thing at points.
Well, that lyric specifically, I think it just felt good to say, and kind of like cowboy up a little bit and put in your best effort, even though there's nothing left. Just do your best. Kind of what that means.
I think that's really a theme of like the whole album that comes back a lot. And like you said with mantras, yeah, a lot of these lyrics are things that, like you said, felt good to say, but they feel good to say because like they're the sort of thing like sometimes you just need to remind yourself of these things, and that can kind of feel like a mantra. And
right.
And there's a lot of themes of another way of looking at the long game is through the lens of just our worldviews generally, and where things are at in the world. I think, and it kind of comes across on this record that we were all in a personally better place than we were on the last one. But what that allowed us to do was kind of like take a step back and sort of, rather than looking internally at the things we were dealing with, kind of like looking outward at the world.
Right.
And we did a lot of that on this record. And the long game, the song itself and Black Sheep have a lot of themes of, environmental disaster and just the direction of the world and everything. We've had a bit of that in Florida this week with our second hurricane.
And how?
In a week. So, yeah, it's timely. I don't remember where I was going with this, but yeah, like these things that we just tell ourselves all the time to sort of get through these things, to persevere. That the long game can be seen as us and our mantra, kind of as a band, but it's also kind of like as a species, as a like humanity in general ought to be playing the long game. Kind of here for like there's a foundation called the Long Now Foundation that is trying to like put a fifth digit on the calendar year, because it's like, why should we assume that we'll only live for another that we're done by then, and I like that mentality that like we'll get through this somehow. Like, will we not, I don't know, but maybe not. Maybe having the mentality that we won't get through it is not productive.
Right. Yeah, that's a whole different genre. There's enough art dedicated to that for sure. So I guess while Seth gets Taylor, what's some of the things that you guys feel like either changed about you personally or was different in your headspace creatively that allowed this one to be less introspective, less like what's necessarily wrong and more outward facing and what could be right?
I think
There's some heavy personal
Yeah.
issues that were going on during the making of the last one that, fortunately we made it through and are on just a better side of it now. And yeah, I think just being happier and connecting with each other more than we were during that period helped to sort of have that. You just don't, I don't know, you're able to have the bandwidth to like broaden more than just like focusing on what's going on right now.
Well, that's a really poignant way to put it. That is some of the struggle for a lot of people creatively. If you don't have enough bandwidth, you end up, I guess, kind of regurgitating the narrow spectrum that you're having yourself stuck in.
Yeah.
And also community. Like, I feel like with this one, we've been a little more connected to like the cities that we play in and meeting more people. Whereas like the first record and a little bit into the second one, it was a little more like this and a secret for a little bit. But this one was like more like this. And
We're here now.
comfortable.
Yeah, more comfortable
doing
being
this.
in front of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the first record was completely written in the garage during COVID. Like nobody, we hadn't played any shows. We didn't connect to any sort of scene at all. So I think over time we've sort of, connected with people more.
How do you think that's helped the band realize its identity? Has the experiences been a mirror?
I think it's been really exciting and interesting. Like for the most part, like we didn't really expect anything. We didn't really know what would be waiting for us if and when shows like started happening and there was a music scene.
Right.
We just sort of like, maybe it's just going to be a bunch of deathcore bands. Maybe it's going to be nothing at all. And to get out and like be able to play with a bunch of bands that are inspiring to us is really cool. But it's like nobody's on each other's thing, like, or at least in the lanes that we stay in where things are interesting to us, is everybody's kind of doing their own interesting thing. And it's just inspiring. Like I like to think that we've inspired people and people have inspired us, and it's just like a
never-ending story. The never-ending story. Alrighty, so we will pick it back up here. We are now joined by Taylor, the last portion of the tilt. Welcome, Taylor.
What's up?
Perfect timing, because we were talking about growing a tail, and I was hoping you would get here to answer this one, because as a bass player, this was one of the first parts where the bass playing really got me, and it got me throughout the entire record, but this was one of the first spots. Tell me about the bass effect, that tone you're using in the beginning. It's like some kind of Bootsy Collins thing. It's like some kind of funky envelope filter thing. It was a beautiful bass sound, and I have to ask where that came from.
The very beginning?
I think it's, in the beginning.
There's no bass effect on that.
No, like in the beginning of the verse, it sounds like there's like wah or envelope filter or phaser.
Use any
I didn't
pedals
use
in
any
that song?
effects on that.
Wow. Well, whatever articulation you got in your hands, that bass line is infectious, man. It sounds so cool.
Yeah.
There's a million good bass moments on this. If I can just straight step outside my character for a minute, any bass players out there will absolutely love this album. The bass goes off. It's awesome. So you showed up to get a little bit of compliment right out of the gate.
I'll take it.
So let's move on to track 3, Between Two Fires. One of the things I want to ask about this was, what made you choose to release this as one of the singles previous to the whole album's release?
We thought it was good. We liked it.
Yeah.
It gave us confidence, and we get confidence from each other. And seeing what Taylor was doing, what Z was doing, what William was doing, it was just a nice boost from everyone. You can just like look to your left or right and see like, oh, that person's doing the best they can. It felt good.
And I think that was definitely one of the songs on this album where we, like, as soon as we finished writing it, we were just like, oh, fuck yeah, this song, like, feels so good to play. And it just, something about it just ticks every box for me personally. And yeah, it was just one of those songs that is just amazing to play.
It was also one that was on that final session with The Long Game and Black Sheep, and I think it just had, I mean, it had that immediacy factor of like, that's one of the latest ones we did, and we always like the latest thing the most.
Yeah.
But it felt kind of like, I don't know, can I say this yet? But like classic Tilt, like it felt like something that, not that we've done before, but it felt like something that felt very us, and everybody that heard it would immediately know it's very us. But also it had just enough of that like element of newness, element of things that we hadn't tried before. There's a bunch of like sequenced synthesizers and stuff on that I programmed on my laptop, and I do that stuff all the time, but I'd never put it on a Tilt song before, and that was one thing where it was like, that's a whole new avenue of things that we haven't done. And the layered keyboard, guitar, sax solos that are throughout, and just there was just enough things in there that made it feel really fresh and new to us, and like that we haven't done something like this, but it also felt like this is going to be familiar to people that like it. So it just felt like the perfect first thing to put out.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot layer-wise and going on there. And one of the things that I noticed was, I don't know, I call it a solo section, but maybe you don't see it that way, but the instrumental bits that like precede the verses, how do you guys navigate adding those bits into your songs? Because you could just as easily slam from the chorus into the verse, but there was, like you said, you have so many things on, there's more to give. How do you navigate where to put those parts and how to compose these songs when you have so many elements?
Well, that one we structured out like that. We were like, we want kind of like an intro thing, and then we want verse, little solo section, chorus, little solo section, back into the verse. So we wanted it to just be kind of like a lead way back into the vocals, each way.
Yeah, it's just fun to do that sort of thing, like pre-choruses and post-choruses and whatever, just little bits to get us in and out of a part, so it's not just so predictably, oh, now we're back in the verse. Like, that stuff keeps stuff really exciting to us, and it was fun to just go in. Those are the sort of things where when we do it in the garage, we just do it one way, and we like have all these ideas of how we're gonna do it in the studio. And we got into the studio, and we pulled out the on the wall, and they don't have it anymore. This pissed me off. They sold it, but they had like the Eddie Van Halen Frankenstrat on the wall, and I was just like, wouldn't it be so funny to use this and just do dive bombs and shit? Like, so I did that, just like crank the distortion with the Frankenstrat and doing dive bombs and stuff, and did that every time, and then went through, did a keyboard solo every time, went through, did a sax solo every time, and then at the end of it, we were like, the original idea was to pick and choose. You know, like, we'll do the and then people like the keyboard, and then I like the guitar, and people, we couldn't agree on anything, so we were just like, fuck it, let's have it all in there at once.
How do you balance the cacophony? Is it a case by case thing like that, where it's just like, you know, we thought we were gonna do only one part? Yeah.
We like cacophony.
Yeah, I think we just like stupid shit, man. We just like stupid shit. And also when we play like that song live, or a lot of them, it's just like, it's not going to be the same every time. And it is fun that way. Because why would you want to try to sound like yourself so bad? It's more fun to just like hit fucking random notes sometimes. It's just, it keeps it like, it could be bad even. It's like, it doesn't matter. Like,
oh yeah, one of these days I'm gonna actually rip a real solo live, and people are gonna be like, I had no idea they could do that.
Well, do you think that, I guess this is something I wanted to ask you about later, but it seems pertinent to ask you now. You have added a bunch of extra instrumentation in this record, varying spots that aren't from the four of you, or things that maybe are from one of the four of you that, you know, unless you're going to grow a couple of extra arms, you're not going to be able to do it live. How much do you think about being able to recreate this stuff live like this? Or is it more like you were saying, Sawyer, where it's just like, fuck it, we're just going to let it be different each time. As long as our core elements are there, we let it ride.
I think it's somewhat both. And if we had all the money in the world, we'd have everyone able to be at every show, but like our album show, November 2nd at Oscura, we're gonna have Sheldon from Sorry Barb fly in, and we're gonna have Jaron play with us, and Jeannie will be there. So that one, it just feels like, okay, we're doing our best to get every piece there.
Yeah.
But it just where we're at, it can't be every show.
Right.
But I think the way that we do it, it doesn't matter too much. Like, it's still fun, it's still energetic, and Z can still somehow play 3 instruments at once.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
I have a video of you at practice standing on the amp playing the keyboard with the feet, hitting a guitar chord and playing the saxophone at the same time. And it's
Perfect.
yeah. So as long as we got that going on, I think we'll be all right. Yeah.
Sometimes our practices are that crazy.
Yeah.
Well, you know, some bands get really militant about, I don't want anything to be on the record that we can't recreate live.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that's cool. It has its place, but
Yeah.
we're not Rush. You know, I think if anything, we're more like Smashing Pumpkins. They have like songs where there's like 200 guitar tracks. I mean, we've never been that crazy. Rather than 200 guitars, we would rather just have 10 different things.
Right. Well, that keeps it fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then once you have 10 different things, you can have 20 different things.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like, I think having a bunch of different instruments isn't really in itself that crazy. So many bands like have so many layers, but it's just layers of the same thing, you know? And
Right.
and we like a bunch of different textures and the surprise that comes with that, you know? Like when you do something in the studio and you just can't recreate that, it becomes a surprise when you listen to it, and that's just more fun to us.
Well, that's a perfect segue into the next one. I want to talk about track 4, Dulling a Tongue. One of the things that stuck out to me here was the touch of the electronics. That was the song where the electronics first stuck out to me as a much different flavor. They weren't woven in. It was like its own thing there. So talk to me about how you guys approach putting in these different layers that aren't something you're going to do live or are just for the sake of liking the silly shit. You know what I mean?
So that one, actually, we were going to try to have as much of that live as we can because Jules, who did some electronics on that song, is actually going to be at the show as well.
Cool.
And it was a combination of things with that one. That song sort of came about because, like I said, Growing a Tail was kind of like a guiding light on this album. And we knew we had directions for certain things we'll get into later, but like we had this sort of folksy direction that it was going to go into later. And we had this direction of we knew we wanted everything to be kind of like a poppy-ish like song with a hook. But something that was present on Growing a Tail that sort of made it stick out like a sore thumb at first was kind of this like jungly drum and bass kind of influence on it. And, you know, we love that stuff. Like we would play pool together after practices and stuff and just have like LTJ Bukum or something like that on. And so we were like, we want just to make Growing a Tail make sense, really. We wanted to have another song that sort of went into that. And Sawyer had already mentioned he wanted a song called Dulling a Tongue years ago when we wrote Growing a Tail. So it was like, okay, why don't we make the companion to Growing a Tail and have it be Dulling a Tongue and just go full tilt into those like jungly kind of things. And the guy that was perfect to help us with that was Jules, who's a good friend of ours who's really into, he's just a genius with electronic stuff. And he chopped up William's drums. William, like we sent him the drum tracks literally like the day before we were done with the record, like and he just chopped them up overnight and sent us back these little chop fills that we could place. And he did a lot of little squelchy things that he just like made these synths with his effects racks and Bitwig and stuff, and it's just really cool. And then we combine that with the virtual synths from Logic that I use. And yeah, it just made a lot of different stuff in there. Yeah, it was fun.
So when you approach that, it's just a matter of keeping the Pandora's box mentality.
Yeah, I think it was like, I mean, we we kind of had a feeling of what we were getting into.
Yeah, we knew that Jules would give us something crazy, and I mean, it sounded like car accidents what he was doing, because he was just working on his laptop in the studio there, and he'd be like, "What do you think of this?" And he'd hand it to us, and it was just like cacophony, and then he'd make it kind of sync up to your drum track, and he did a lot for that track. It sounds so cool with what he added to it.
He was calling them Transformers, Transformers aneurysm sounds.
Nice.
And, yeah, they're all over that track. They're all over a couple songs on this album, and it's just every time. Yeah, it was funny. Like when we were just in the control room, when somebody else, I think it was like it was either vocal day or it was something. He was there a lot, and just somebody would be in the booth or somebody would be tracking something, and he would just have his headphones in. When we got a free minute, it was like, yeah, what do you think of this? And we were just yeah.
Yeah, throw it in.
That's awesome.
Spencer, our engineer, producer, was probably like,
We don't need another ingredient in this pie. Come on. But sometimes it's just a matter of that blind faith, yeah.
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 The trust in we want to do something drum and bassy, but it's going to come out sounding totally different.
Yeah, and you gotta trust your collaborators if you're collaborating. I mean, we have complete implicit trust in each other when we're playing, and we extend that to whoever we invite because we invited them, and we're grateful to them lending their talents to us. So we know, like when we reach out to people, it's because we know what they do and we respect what they do and we want them to do what they do, and that's the case for everybody that was on this record. Jaron, who did some folksy instruments, and Sheldon, who played some sax, and Jules, and Leo, who played banjo.
And Jeannie.
And Jeannie, yeah.
Well, you bring up a really good point on mission drift just a tiny bit. When you bring in outside collaborators, it is important that you can trust them and you can know that you can let them have the rope to do what they do, not do what you've told them to. And that can really enhance what you're doing. How do you feel about that as it pertains to having a producer?
We just got lucky.
We just got lucky.
We've known Spencer, I mean, since like right out of high school.
Yeah, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
10 years ago. So, I mean, he's great. I don't think we've had to shop around really. I don't know.
Yeah, we have a really great relationship that I really think of it as like collaborative,
right,
between us and him,
right,
and it's cool, like it's evolved to a point where we all know each other and trust each other, and when we have ridiculous cacophonous ideas, he trusts us to get through it, and we trust him to let us know when enough is enough, and when he says enough is enough, we believe it 100%.
Yeah.
When it does get to that point, and it doesn't often, but when it does, we believe it. And when he, on the rare occasion that he's like, you should add this, we believe it too, So yeah, we come in with a pretty strong idea of what we want to get and how we want to get it. But and we have a mutual trust there that allows us to get really close to that, and he helps us so much to get really close to that. And then when he does have those things of like either subtractive or additive things, we completely trust his judgment with that stuff. Yeah.
And he's also really good at getting people out of their shell.
Mm-hmm.
And like I remember going in there to sing the first couple times, and he just has a way of just getting it out of you the best it can be.
I love that.
I think that's
Yeah.
And he knows how to do it differently for different people
Yeah.
too. Like we had my mom on the second album, and she's never been in a studio or anything, and he was just like obviously completely different acting when the way he'd be acting with us, but but he was just like knew how to get her to do exactly what she needed, and it came out great.
Yeah.
So he can just work with anybody. He's just hell of a guy. Like
Very cool. Yeah, it's and the reason why I ask is because we kind of live in a world where the term producer has got muddied up a little bit.
Yeah.
And I don't know that necessarily everybody realizes what roles producers do serve and can serve.
I don't think I really know what a producer does. I know that Spencer, like, because it's funny, if you think of producer as like Rick Rubin, That's very much a collaborative role between us and him. I think like the ideas and what you add and what you subtract and blah 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 blah. But like in terms of, obviously he's a top grade engineer, and he can work so fast, and we could never do what we do without that skill that he has.
Yeah.
But also just his ability to milk that best performance out of anybody and really get people out of their shell. Like we've had 5 collaborators on this album. We had your mom on the last one, and it's just every time, somebody's like, it's usually their first time, especially in like a big, relatively big dollar kind of studio, and they're like, ugh. And
it can be really intimidating.
Yeah.
Well, that's very cool. Well, big ups to all the producers out there. So let's move on to track 5, Keep Dreaming Little Ghost. I really didn't see this one coming. Talk to me about the Bossa Nova curveball.
I don't know. Like,
who's the Bossa Nova fan? Who did it first?
I think I don't know.
We all like that stuff.
We were just like,
Was it just like, hey, let's write this Bossa Nova jam?
I don't even think we thought about it.
it just
I don't think
we were just like, let's write this song. Who has an idea? And
it's
then
not the first one we've done like that either.
Yeah.
We had a song called Arctic Soda Water back in the day that had a kind of a Bossa Nova groove. I think it was just better than that one. But
it's such a good track.
It was actually the hardest one. I will say that.
Sure.
It was by far the hardest one to get it to actually end up on the album. When we recorded it, it was 10 minutes long.
Jesus.
Yeah, and we spent a lot of. I wouldn't say a lot of time, but a lot of.
You shaved almost half the song out.
Yeah. There was all those flute solos, guitar solos, the bridge, the first chorus. Like all of those parts were much longer, and we spent some time just like paring everything down, because for a while it felt like we were, when we were going through trying to feel out what the record felt like, it felt like hitting a brick wall at that song, because it was just so long, it was so daunting, and getting it down to where it felt like manageable and felt good to everyone it took a minute.
Well, that's funny you should say that, because this was the second thing I wanted to ask you about this track. As I'm listening to it, it's kind of occurring to me that this Bossa Nova section had to be broken up by this, I don't know what you want to call it. It's not necessarily a chorus. It's just the other part, as it were.
Yeah.
How did you approach having a song with such a distinct vibe like a Bossa Nova rhythm, but then have this completely other section, but still try to tie the room back together? I guess the answer to that is initially it was part of a 10-minute piece. So how do you take that 10-minute piece down and have it make sense?
Well, the first part, actually, the answer is William, play a fill. That's usually our answer to how to get in and out of a part when it doesn't make any sense. Just, William, can you play a fill here, and then it'll make sense. Okay. But yeah, it was. I think it was actually a lot easier than it seemed. I know I was talking about how difficult this song was, but there were a lot of reasons for that. There was the mixing. There was a bunch of other reasons. But in terms of knowing what needed to be sort of cut and trimmed and that sort of thing, that came pretty quickly.
Yeah, like if you would have heard the 10-minute version, you would have been like, okay, this.
Yeah. There was like a pretty obvious moment where it would lose your attention, and we would just like cut it there.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's got to be like a secret B-side someday.
Yeah. I mean, God, if we one day put out all of the things that we've done and haven't put out, it would be a lot.
So this is actually something that just came to me. When you're doing something like this Bossa Nova bit, there are some really distinct characteristics, both in the ways that you have to play and in the sonic characteristics of that make it that. Mm-hmm. How much of that are you conscious of when you're doing it, and how much of it is just like, hey, that just happened?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think very little of it we're actually conscious of in the moment, because
you have to sculpt those tones. You know what I mean?
I don't remember which came first, whether it was the bass line or the guitar, or the drums, or the keys there, but like I think as soon as one of us was, whether it was the boo doo doo or the ba ba ba, whatever it was, as soon as somebody was kind of on that groove, it was like, okay, we kind of know what we need to do here.
Yeah. I think it was communicated more sonically.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was more like using our ears to sort of
feel it out and then sort of bring it together.
Right.
Of course, it was 10 minutes when we first did it, but honestly, like, we pared it down quite a bit, and it just sounds so much better.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got a great songy thing, and obviously you guys said that was something you were really trying to do on this record, make some repeat rapid fire bangers, as it were, and this one keeps moving. And that was one of the things that I noticed. The structure seemed like it was maybe an after the fact thing, but I wouldn't have guessed it was from a 10-minute piece.
Yeah, I mean, well, the structure of the song is pretty much the same as it was. The only thing is that all of the parts were kind of longer, and we stripped some things out. And there are parts that happen in places where they happened before, and we took the parts where they happened before out and stuff. It's mostly the same song as it was. Like, it's not really Frankenstein together structurally, but it is. It was just too much of a good thing. You know?
Yeah, too much ice cream.
Right.
Yep.
All right, well, let's move on to track 6, Tropicana Fields Forever. This one is my favorite. I've listened to this song probably fucking 300 times. When you guys played at the Family Jam, I think I sang every word that I know, even if they're wrong, and smiled in between. So all bullshit, all cards on the table. I love this song. Tell me what this song meant to you guys, and why you chose to put out this one too ahead of the record.
I mean, well, to me, lyrically, it was like we had talked a little bit about this being kind of like a Florida album. I think we'd kind of run from being Floridian for so long. Like, none of us have ever felt like a particular pride in that. You know, I was born out of state too, and it felt especially to me like kind of alienating. Like, I hate the heat. I'm an indoor goth kind of, you know, like the heat is not for me, and yeah, the beach is not for me. Like, so I had always felt kind of alienated, and just that first lyric, the like, had spent 26 years rotting out in the sun, that just felt really good to say, like, just to get off my chest, and because it was kind of cutting. It was kind of like something I felt like I'd always wanted to say,
right?
To just be like, "Ah, you bastards," but at the same time, it really is like kind of a celebratory, communal song. And we talked about like, this is gonna feel like a sunnier kind of Tilt album than we're used to, and it's gonna feel kind of more Florida. And this song felt really Florida, and it was like, let's just lean into it. Let's just make it camp, you know.
Yeah, and that was one of the things I wanted to ask. How important was referencing the St. Pete landmark? I mean, it's such a brilliant. It's got the Strawberry Fields Forever reference right away, but then our own backyard, and then everything that you can tie with the Trop, you know, and of course now it's State of Affairs. Yeah. How much did that literally play into it, or that was just a great way to kind of put that kitschy Florida stamp on it and then do your thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was integral. It was both. It was I don't remember. The song title actually might have come long before the actual song, if I'm remembering correctly. I think I was just passing the Trop on 275 once and just thought that Tropicana Fields Forever would be such a tilty title.
Yeah.
And then when that lyric sort of fell out of my mouth when we were writing that song, I knew immediately, like, okay, there it is, you know, that's my excuse to use that title.
There you go. So that actually made me think of something. When you transition between like your singing parts and then Sawyer, when your parts come in that song, the song does shift gears a little bit, but not really, which I guess is kind of a tilty thing in and of itself. Do you look at when your parts come in, you're kind of writing your own song or your own thing that you can identify to that tip, or are you kind of picking up where he left off?
I usually don't. I don't know. I wouldn't give a straight answer to that, because it used to be feeling like we were making two different songs, and now we all get together, and if I pick up on what they're singing about, I'll have it in my mind, and we've just known each other so long that I can kind of get it. And we'll talk about it now, whereas it used to be we were just trying so hard to make a song that it would almost be like throwing paint at the wall, which it was good for that time. But now we talk about it more, and we make the same song. But for that one specifically, I think the intention was kind of like have a hard cut in the chorus. And I don't know, I'm kind of lost on words, but I don't know, that song's like a love letter to Florida, as you've said before.
Yeah. And I think that, like, generally when we do that, and it is a thing where it's kind of funny, I've thought about this because I'm a nerd, but I think we had, like, I know it's felt like it's always a thing that we do, but, like, really on the first 2 records, I think there's only, like, 2 or 3 songs on each record where we sing together. And on this record, it was 12 songs that we sang together.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Or something like that. It was a lot. And yeah, I think we've always sang together since we were kids in high school. So there is kind of that telepathy there.
Right.
And there's also, honestly, like, the feeling of, I hate to sound so unmagical about it, but it is like a song is kind of what you make it. And a lot of times, like, well, maybe it is more magical that way. I don't know. It's kind of up to your perspective. But a lot of times I'll just say something and I won't really understand what it means until I think about it later.
Right.
And I think that works collaboratively, too. A lot of times I won't really know what Sawyer's saying and Sawyer and vice versa. And then when we realize what each other was saying, we kind of, like, maybe it's mental gymnastics, maybe it's wishful thinking, I don't know. But, like, it makes sense to us. We're like, oh, yeah, like, yeah, we're on the same page. Whether we were or not, it feels like we were.
We'll talk about it like when we're first writing one, and we'll say, what do you want this to be about? What are you singing about? And then we'll compare notes, and it's like alligators getting decapitated, and it's like, yeah, that was exactly what I was talking about.
Perfect.
Yeah. I was thinking about alligators getting decapitated too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, that's really a good sign of the trust that you guys have, and the greater than the sum of your parts thing that really is evident in you guys as a band. So I think that's really cool, and that's a hard thing to do when you have 2 vocalists. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Somebody got to feel like they're singing somebody else's song, but you guys get to feel like you're singing together. That's
completely
very cool.
I think in the future, we would like to do, and we do, harmonies with each other and stuff like that. And in the future, I'm sure we'll do even more and more of that. But it does feel really good to just, like, I don't know. We always feel like we have something to say.
Yeah, and it feels good to trade off too.
Heck yeah, your guys' voices interplay really well, and this recording, I think, showcases it quite a bit. And I'm sure people will pick up on that right away. Let's move on to track 7, Ostrich. Want to switch away from vocals for a second. One of the things I want to ask about, this was my engineer hat I couldn't take off, is the guitar tone at the beginning. That slinky, clean, funky, almost 80s-y guitar tone. What is your influence and inspiration of that? Because nowadays, that tone, I think, when people do it, they totally misfire, or the other end of the pool is just like so much gain we can't stand life. So what is your influence for that slinky guitar tone? That's a lane, that's a thing.
I don't know about influence too much, but I think just playing with the sound, and I'm glad you're saying I was hitting the nail on the head, but I just did what sounded good.
Yeah. Was that your amp, or was that a Kemper?
That was that's the digital one, right? Yeah. It was a Kemper head and reverb and just the Paul Reed Smith that I play.
Nice.
Pretty much it.
Because the reason why I ask influence would be because that's one of those types of things that if you aren't used to hearing that sound, you might not notice what's good about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It might just be like, oh, this sounds thin. Oh, this, but it really sets the stage. So I was curious where that instinct might have been born from, but maybe it's just part of your DNA.
I think, you know what it really reminds me of, if I can be so bold as to suggest this influence? It really reminds me of when you would play in, God, what was that song?
Oh, in jazz
in
band?
jazz band.
Yeah, that's probably where it comes from, actually. We were in jazz band together in high school, and it just sounded like that.
And then this song was another one that had the mantra lyric got me. That I get so out of it. That really smacked of me of like that 80s era. I don't know any other way to put it. Like I picture a concert where it's all white lights on and everybody's dancing their asses off and no one cares. So I'm curious, what that line, what you were trying to get across with that line, because I felt like it wasn't necessarily a nail on the head kind of thing. And there again, what you guys find in the power either compositionally or to keep your songs powerful with this mantra lyric thing where you repeat the lyrics.
Yeah. So that lyric specifically, I think the lyrics to this song, and it's whenever I talk about lyrics or we talk about lyrics, I want to be clear that it's like, it's multiple choice,
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
it's just an interpretation as interpreted by us. And I think that anybody else could have any different interpretation of it. But definitely something that I was thinking about with the whole lyrics to this song was this feeling of not really feeling like you are worthy of things, like not knowing what you can wish for, you know? I have a habit of being a little bit superstitious, and that's a line in the song also, it's about kind of feeling superstitious or feeling like I can't want this, you know? I don't feel like I'm a good enough person to like have this good thing happen to me or something, or like to have all of these good things in my life, feeling sort of guilty about that, or just, yeah, that's kind of what the song is about to me, is that sort of feeling guilty of wanting, but wanting nonetheless, and yeah, that sort of thing.
So let me ask you guys, as the rhythm section, something. When you can start to pick up on some of these vibes and some of the groundwork that Z and Sawyer can lay for like the top line portion of the show, how do you guys approach supporting that?
I think we just, like, because the lyrics are often, like, the last thing added, so we've kind of been doing the same thing for a while, you know what I'm saying? So we're just kind of building on that, and we've built up a relationship now after the past few years doing this together where we can just kind of do whatever anytime. So we're just kind of trying to be as solid as we can as of a foundation, I think, if you'd agree with that. Yeah.
We pretty much just try to be the most solid foundation for like everything else.
Yeah.
Like boo like doing that a bunch, feeling that pulse in that like beat makes people start like dancing and stuff like that.
Yes,
and
amen.
That's like a confidence booster for everyone.
Right. Yeah.
If you see people out there dancing, and it's just what you need.
The analogy a lot of the times that Taylor has used is that they're the bus drivers and Sawyer and I are the minigun on top.
Taylor drives the bus. I'm the navigator. You're the minigun, and you're throwing explosive barrels off the back. I think that's where we're
Nice.
Right. Yeah.
And a Mad Max.
I was gonna say that's like an album. You gotta ask AI to make that for you, and make that as the cover for the single for the 10-minute version.
Oh yeah, okay, fair enough.
The least
That's how that one was made, on the bus. So I guess this is a little bit of a redundant question, but this song also had it, so I want to kind of touch on it again. That bridge section in Ostrich really opens up, really flowers, really changes a lot. Are there times when you do things like that or ideas come up and you're writing these parts and you're like, holy shit, how are we going to tie this up? How are we going to get back home? Or is it just a matter of this might be a 10-minute song?
In Ostrich?
Yep.
I don't remember there being a bridge in Ostrich.
It's like that's
The thing
Well,
with
it's
the
like
outro bit?
Yeah. Because that kind of ties it up, even though it doesn't go back.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Where some of these ideas
Yeah.
come from.
I think for part of it, I wanted something that sounded like Mario Kart music,
Right.
And
Yeah.
that was kind of like the vibe to get that part done. But I think it was just like the core parts are kind of similar to the other parts of the song for that, but it is just like if you end it different, it feels good. Like
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there was that, like, if I'm remembering correctly, I think Sawyer did have that guitar part, played it earlier in the song maybe, and the part that starts the outro, and I think we just wanted an excuse to have that part in there because it was cool.
And also, it kind of feels like those 10-minute songs, like just cramming a piece that would go in there into a short song.
Yeah.
So
And
you can
even in
get
the
that
bridge,
flavor
like
too.
it's different enough. Like I'm playing slap in that, and we're all going crazy.
Yeah.
yeah,
And I'm also playing like flamenco style power chords on
Yeah.
bass, and it's
Yeah.
like that's sort of like in the like keyboard solo section to like start it, and then it just goes crazy. You gotta. It's the same like structure of the song, but we expand it so it sounds big.
Right.
And it sounded so much more big when we got to do it in the studio. I mean, that was one of the things everything on this album was so much fun to like add things and stuff. But I remember like, when we play that live, it doesn't feel thin, but it's like just that one keyboard and just smashing the hell out of it. Whereas in the studio, it was fun. I got to play the keyboard solo, and then underneath that, I got to put a clavinet that is like only pops out every once in a while. Sawyer was like, do this little glissando thing just at this one moment, so that's like punched in there. And then the whole way there's like a sequence on the micro chord going, and it's just there's so many little things in that part that just really make it more than just like a keyboard solo outro to me.
Yeah, big time. And that was one of those parts in the record when I was listening to it initially where it kind of felt like it was making the transition, when it seemed when the record was just one song to me, So I didn't really necessarily catch it instantly as the end of a song.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because, well, let's get into the next one because it really gets in, it sets up Fuselage really nicely.
Yeah.
But the thing that I wanted to ask you about this one, and this is the part I've been waiting. What is with the influence of that song? Because to me, it's like almost reggae, it's almost funk, but what it really reeks of to me, and please don't take this the wrong way, but it really reeks of me is what I call cocaine funk. The shit from the 70s and the 80s that, like I said, everybody's dancing with all the lights on and we're all got eyes like dinner plates and this is the best day of our lives.
Fame!
So, yes. Like, I'm telling you. So it struck me instantly. So I'm very curious where that corner of the Tilt universe comes from.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I think the main thing in that song, the moment where we were like, holy shit, this is a song, was when Sawyer came up with that chorus, which is just felt so Lou Reed classic rock. I don't know. It just felt like just something that we had never even touched with
It's
a 10-foot
very
pole
funny
before.
that you say that because the next thing that I had written about this one was what's up with that chorus, because to me it was like a 60s song, kind of like a 60s pop song, and like some like abstract as shit Flaming Lips type shit. So please expound on that, because that chorus is a really poignant part of that song.
I think we wanted something, and we did this on a few songs on the record, but we just wanted something where one groove and one style for a verse and a complete 180 for a chorus.
Yeah, I think it's funny because where I was going with that was like I didn't even realize how funky the rest of the song was until we played it live. Because then we started playing it live, and I just couldn't help but like dance, and it's funny. Like to me, it almost felt like it had like a funky, like almost like a G-funk hip hop 90s groove to me. Like that's just how it makes me want to move live, and I didn't realize that it felt that way at first. Like I was just so hooked on the chorus. But that's a thing on a couple of songs on this record where I think it was like kind of a conscious decision where we thought, okay, how do we wanted these songs to be really hooky, and we just realized that something that when we did it, it felt like it made the chorus really hooky to us to make the chorus as different from the verse as we possibly could. And it just felt like it jumped out at you. And so, yeah, I think that's something we did a few times, and we just really liked every time when the chorus just felt like, well, that doesn't feel anything like what just came before it, and now I'm like engaged.
Yeah. Yeah, that worked on me as a listener for sure. Well, that brings up another interesting question of something that I didn't necessarily intend on asking, but I know when we did the first interview, we had talked a little bit about the challenge of writing a shorter song or a more concise song, but still getting everything you wanted out of it. Mm-hmm. What do you think was the difference for you guys now that you were able to write these shorter songs? You know, they got choruses, even though the structures aren't necessarily totally predictable, they still have some familiarity. What do you think was the change for you guys, or was it just a matter of we're deciding to do it and you did it?
It was more that.
Yeah.
But we also wanted this to be like somewhat anthemic in a way. Like it's like a sing along. You can sing along to it relatively easily, and like
it is one word, the chorus.
I was gonna say I've been dancing on my apartment singing Fuselage, so I'm in.
But it's one word,
yeah.
So you're able to. It's not 50 words a minute or anything like that.
It is the best feeling in the world when you get to look out and you have the worst vantage point for this.
I don't get to see
but when you get to look out and see people sing the words, so it is nice to.
We'll get a CCTV for William.
Yeah,
right. We went to see Depeche Mode, and I didn't know a lot of the songs they were playing, but he's a big fan, and one of the things that struck me was that like halfway through the chorus, like they'd play it, and then the second time it comes around, you could sing it. And that was kind of something we talked about for this. Mm-hmm. Just having like a song where you hear the chorus one time, you could sing it every other time it comes around after that. Yeah. And I hope that worked. But
yeah. It was something where honestly, like at the very beginning of making this album that we talked about, like we said, just saying, you know, without the 10-minute instrumentals, without the ambient interludes and stuff, what does a Tilt album feel like without all that stuff? Because that stuff, like after 2 albums, felt kind of integral, and it almost felt like, oh, maybe we'll lose something without that. And yeah, it was kind of like a challenge to ourselves to just see what that would be like, what just a very like song forward album would feel like. And yeah, we kind of held ourselves to that the whole way through, I think.
Well, then let's move on to track 9, Three-Legged Chair, because this is kind of where
this is kind of where I'm lying.
This is kind of where the rule of this gets broken.
Yeah.
And as the kind of shed some light on this, how do you see this piece sitting in the ebb and flow of the entire album? Because this is really the only one that smacks truly of interlude, and it's, you know, quite a bit different sonically. It chills out quite a bit there as well. Mm-hmm. So talk to me a little bit about how that song fit in maybe in the writing process and how you feel it fits into the display of the record.
So, well, I know from the very beginning of like when we were conceptualizing the record and starting to write it, the first idea was that we were gonna make just like a pop album, that we were just going to make our version of a pop album of just like verses and choruses and not too much fat. But as it developed, as often happens with us, we have our musical influence and our musical ideas and where we want to go with that. But then we have sort of like an aesthetic influence creep in. Mm-hmm. And an aesthetic influence that crept in pretty early on was that of like sort of folk music. And, you know, we were listening to a lot of that stuff, the Hammond's song, The Roaches, and, you know, like Animal Collective. And, I mean, I could go on. There's like just a bajillion Pentangle, a bunch of cool folk stuff that we were listening to and wanted to get that across in some way because we were like, yeah, who knows when we're going to come back to this sort of thing, you know? So there was that, and we kind of knew that we had these folkier songs, and we kind of were pushing them more towards the back of the record, because the front of the record, we didn't expect this, but the front of the record had a lot of like kind of faster songs on it. And so I think Fuselage and Three-Legged Chair were kind of like a palate cleanser, like a movement into this folkier, more sedate kind of section of the album. And I think Three-Legged Chair really just came from Sawyer playing that guitar part. I think he just had that guitar part for a long time, right?
Yeah, that's something that if I am playing like a new guitar, I just play that for some reason.
Yeah, you gotta have the go-to riff.
Yeah, it's just like halfway up the neck, and you put your fingers on 3 strings, and it just feels like that little area is the best a guitar sounds to me for some reason, at least right now.
Yeah, so it was like we have an excuse to like put your signature little test the guitar out moment and just build a little bit of a song out of it, and it worked really well going into Vancouver, or what is it? Flower in the Weeds, which was originally called Vancouver. And another thing, honestly, was financially, we were cheating a bit because they were one thing. They were one song. It was Flower in the Weeds and Three-Legged Chair were one moment, I guess. They were 1 6-minute song, and we were like, hey, we don't want 6-minute songs, so we cut we cut them into separate tracks.
Yeah, it makes sense as separate tracks. I mean, it didn't seem like it lost momentum. So then let's talk about Flower in the Weeds. This one I thought was a little interesting because it has like, and I guess you put it into some context now more, it has like an island vibe, but it's not like the island, it's not like the vanilla island vibe we all know here. So
steel drums.
Yeah. It is a little steel drum.
So talk to me a little bit about how you decided to lean in to the Florida vibe in this one with the island vibe here, because they're, like I said, it's got that DNA, but it's definitely your own thing. And it's hard to do things like bossa nova or like anything funky or like an island vibe and not instantly have someone say, oh, this sounds just like X.
Yeah.
This was one of those times where I smelt the familiar smells of this, but I couldn't say this sounds just like X.
But it doesn't sound like Jimmy Buffett. We screwed up somewhere. Fuck!
You had to be Tilty Buffett.
Yeah. It's like that came from you always wanted to shuffle, right?
Yeah. I got really into Bernard Purdy. He's one of my favorite drummers, and I was just like, dang, this would be really fun to do a shuffle in a song, and then we kind of, just went for it and tried to make it happen. I don't know if I forced it, but worked.
What's funny is that like lyrically, this was a very difficult song. The most so out of any album or any song. Like musically, the most difficult song was definitely "Keep Daydreaming," but this was the most difficult lyrically. And but the music, wasn't much thought gone into it. I mean, he started doing that shuffle, and I think I never really go into my go-to Yamaha for live shows and stuff. I never really go into the chromatic percussion section of the presets very often, but I was like, hey,
we're going there now.
Yep.
We're boldly going.
And there was a preset called Island Bell. So a lot of that comes from Island Bell and the shuffle. But yeah, it was a difficult song to do lyrically, I think. I had the chorus. What's funny is the chorus, it may pop up in another song eventually. It came from a song that me and Jules had done. Jules, who did electronics on the album. And we had done like kind of like a glitch IDM Aphex Twin kind of song where that was my lyric. And we had just done that like the day before. We'd had this practice, and then we showed up and started doing that shuffle, and I was like, what the fuck do I sing over this? And immediately like that just came to my mind, and I just sang that. I was like, all right, well, it's gonna be in 2 songs, I guess. And it was kind of like It was kind of a breakup song in a way. And I'd been in a relationship that lasted 6 years, and it ended, and that's like a huge chunk of your life. It's just a lot of your life and a lot of friends and a lot of, your life just gets shuffled around so much when you have something like that happen. And I never talked about it before. And I didn't feel like I knew how. And after doing that chorus, that's what I felt like that's all I had to say, really. Or maybe I was just like kind of afraid to delve into it more. I didn't really want to. I just thought like
this one's well enough.
Yeah,
alone.
I don't know. It just felt uncomfortable. I didn't want to talk about that sort of thing. And so I left it alone, and we tried several different things, and Sawyer wrote a verse for it, and Taylor wrote a verse for it.
Yeah.
And Taylor was singing lead. It was the first lead Taylor track that we had, and
nice.
Sadly, I was kind of the asshole here when I realized, like, I think I have to say something else in this. So
it was way better with you. And
no. That was what made that song difficult, though. It was, but that was one that really like was another that came together at the last second, kind of with last second decisions like that. But
yeah. We had probably the most lyrical revisions for that song. It was a lot of them.
Yeah, usually it just is like whatever falls out of your mouth is right, but that one was more challenging.
Yeah, it definitely was.
Do you feel like there's any appreciable difference between the ones you have to fight for and the ones that seemingly fall into your lap?
I tend to much prefer the ones that fall in my lap. Usually, yeah. Like those are the ones where I can rattle them off right now. Like I know the ones that like as soon as I open my mouth, like the entire song was there.
Right.
Because that's like it's like a magical moment. It's like you don't really feel like you're thinking, or you don't feel like you did anything. I know that's cliche, but like,
well, it's not, and that's actually we'll mission drift. It's something that I ask a lot of artists, regardless of what their discipline is, when it comes up. And you guys can answer this individually or collectively, however you want. And I think I know what you're going to say. Do you feel like you think of ideas, or do you feel like you just get yourself in a state of mind where the things can come to you?
The second one, yeah. Yeah, I can't think. I'm tired all the time.
Because and the reason why I ask is because stop me if you know this one, but Phil Collins, when he wrote "In the Air Tonight," didn't have any of the lyrics written. He sat down at the console, let the playback go, and just spit it all out, and then went and sang it. And when they asked him what it was about, he had a story that was about a friend or something, but the lyrics had all come to him completely. He's like, I didn't write any of those lyrics; they just came to me.
Yeah.
And I heard that story early on in my life, so then it became this thing I became fixated on. So I like to ask anybody with a creative mind, do you feel like you can think of things, or do you feel like you're an antenna?
I think it is both. I think you have to, well, first of all, like to be an antenna, you have to like, pull the antenna. You have to extend the antenna.
True, good point.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely always thinking. That's also kind of like, that's my secret, Cap, or whatever. Like, it's kind of, you can't shut it off.
Right.
Well,
that's having your antenna up.
Yeah. I mean, and like 90% of the things I think are shit. But yeah, I think it's both. I think it's a little bit of both, but you do have to have the antenna up, and those are my favorite things because honestly, it's not always. It's so far from always. I can count on probably one hand the amount of times where I've just opened my mouth and the whole song was there. But it feels really gratifying, and it also feels gratifying to really think of something. But it doesn't really feel that gratifying to struggle over something.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, because struggling just wouldn't feel good in any context, no matter what.
The struggle doesn't feel good, but like, I guess the end result does. True. At least in me.
Yeah, I mean, it's different for everyone, I think, and for every part of the process. Because like, for the musical part of the process, when we, Yeah, it's just weird. Like, there's different forms of struggle. When you're doing that, it doesn't really feel good. And usually those aren't the songs
those get dropped.
Yeah. But there are songs where they are more of a struggle, but it's not. It doesn't feel like a bad struggle. It just feels
It's
like
like doing a Sudoku puzzle.
pushed through. Yeah.
It's sort of like when we have all the other pieces together, which is kind of what we had with this. We had all the other pieces together. We just needed to find the right one.
Yeah.
And that took a long time.
Yeah.
But I think it was worth it to find it.
Yeah.
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 That's a good point.
And usually when something is a worthwhile struggle, the answer comes immediately, at least. And it might not be immediately right now, but like when the answer does come, it comes all at once, I think. Like, it's never like a piecemeal, like I was struggling, I changed this word and changed that word and changed this note and that note. It's a puzzle piece that took a million years to complete. Usually it's like something where you're thinking of it and you're just like, fuck, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know how to solve this. And then when the answer does come, whenever that is, it comes at once.
Yeah, and I guess the beautiful part about that is you guys seem to be very good at assimilating all of those things and building on them. And it's really shown in the songwriting and the composition here. So I think that's very cool that you guys are in tune like that and ego free enough to notice when they come in and build on it, you know. That's been one of the things lately. So let's move on to track 11, Fair Weather. I'm going to revisit one of the questions here about the mantra lyrics, but this one is different because the lyrics repeat and then the harmony builds and the song comes in on top of it. I found that very interesting. Talk to me about what that's like when you're writing that, because you can't really hash that out in real time. That's got to be something you do in the studio, yeah?
No, we did.
Yeah, we did that. Yeah.
Well, the harmonies, like the specific harmonies being layered on top of each other, was a studio thing. But I think we already knew that we were going to do that because you were already changing your pitch when we would do it. It was just you didn't have the other pitch going underneath it.
Right. But I mean, like, where you have to, like, for want of a better way of putting it, you have to imagine how it's going to be when you can have the other parts in there. So when you're writing these songs and you have to keep singing Fair Weather when the other parts are going to come in, how do you kind of navigate that? Is it really just we're all imagining the same thing?
Yeah, and I think we just make eye contact when we play with each other, and I don't think it's going to be the same every time we play it. We might want it to be, but it's like if the part changes when we're all doing it at the same time, we win. You know?
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, we are so used to, at this point, imagining what a song is going to be like. It's, I think every song we've ever written, you know, when we do it in the garage, like, at least for me, I have like 5 other parts that are going to be in the studio in the back of my head. And I'm always wrong about what they are. And that's the best part, you know, like, but I'm like, oh, this is it. We're going to have this and we're going to have that. And then we get into the studio, we do completely opposite things. I keep notes in my phone of like, when we get into the studio, I'm going to try this and this and this. And then when I'm in the studio, how many times do I touch my phone and look at those notes? Never. So it always ends up being completely different than what we imagine, but we're always imagining what it's going to be when we get to put all the Legos together.
Do you guys all feel that way individually too? Before you go into the studio, like, I've got my core thing that I've done in the garage, but when we get in, I've got shit on deck? Maybe
with vocals, but not so much with instruments. I mean, maybe try something, or there's like an awareness that I want to just improv on guitar when we go in, but other than that, no, I don't think about it like that.
So on bass, this is something that Spencer does all the time, especially with me. He's like, get like 2 or 3 takes that are like really good, and then get 1 take that's just you doing crazy shit.
Sure. We were talking to Take Taylor. I was telling him that earlier. Yeah.
And that happens all the time. It doesn't happen on this track because I wanted to keep it as simple as possible and hold the line.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of times where he's like, you gotta throw some sauce in, and you say it too. Yeah. You're like, do a crazy ass take.
Yeah, just forget the song. Just
forget the song.
yeah.
Do crazy ass solo stuff.
Yeah.
And
usually that's the take.
That's the take.
Usually you do that, and it's just like,
yeah.
was perfect because you don't fully forget the song. Like I don't think you're.
But
at
I'm
that point, it's
also-
so deep in your mind.
Yes, but I'm also like not thinking about it.
Yeah.
If I
right.
have to think about like, oh, I'll do this little run here, like flub it up all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I don't even think about it, and I just play it. It's great.
That song was interesting too because it started out much more complicated than it ended. Like when we first started writing it, it was very difficult to play.
Yeah.
Well, that one has a really particularly driving chorus. Was that always like that?
No. I mean, I guess it sort of got to that point eventually with the strummed guitar and stuff like that, but it always had this kind of off-kilter feel, especially in the intro, which everything's underpinned by this 4 on the floor kick now.
Right.
And at first it wasn't like that. The kick was on this weird timing that I don't remember. And then my guitar was in a strange timing. Your bass was in a strange timing. We were all in different time signatures. And then we all came together in 4/4 at the end. And then and that was just too hard.
Yeah.
Eventually we were just like this.
That idea can be revisited.
Yeah. I mean, it was a cool idea, but I think once we were just like, okay, just put a 4 on the floor kick underneath it. It was like, now it feels like a song. Okay.
And just like bop, 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 bop song. That took. Once we had that 4 on the floor, that was so easy.
It made the song make sense for sure.
It made the song make sense.
And this was your producer's suggestion?
No, this
Or you
was in
guys
the
were just
garage.
like-
This
Yeah,
was
we were just like,
probably our
this
third
is-
time trying it. We were like, Jesus Christ.
Don't do that anymore.
Love it. Love it when a marooning turns into a good thing.
yeah.
All right, well, let's move on to track 12, Dirt Opera. This is the other one that was released prior to the album. Talk to me about that title. I love that title. It's such a visual title. When I saw you guys were dropping that one, I was like, oh, I'm interested in this song just because of what it's called. So talk to me a little bit about that.
No. I mean, I wish I could. It kind of sounded cool.
You like
and
to eat dirt.
I like to eat dirt, man.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about it. Come on.
This is one of those songs that kind of, as I'm listening to it, I'm having a hard time, and this is kind of my pre-production producer or whatever. I'm having a hard time listening to this song and deciding what parts of this are a jam and what parts of this were really like written. Like, so how much of that song was born of like garage jamming, and how much of that did you try to map out?
I think it was pretty mapped
Yeah.
out. We had a whiteboard and we wanted it to read like a techno song or something in structure, and what we got was what we got out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we just said, like, we had that keyboard bit, and we knew we wanted the 4 on the floor kind of techno kick thing. And we were just thinking, like, okay, how does techno work? Like, how does house work? And, like, most forms of dance music, you just bring in a new element or take an element out every 4 bars.
Right.
Like, and we just like, all right, let's do that.
Yeah.
Bring in the guitar, bring in the hi-hat, whatever, like, let's just do that every 4 bars. So we did map it out, that one, I think. That was more than jamming, yeah.
But was it born from the map, or you were jamming and then put the map to the jam?
Yeah, I don't remember.
I think I had that beat that's at the end of the song where it's like the dance beat with the left hand, bum bum bum, while the left hand's just doing that.
And I know I definitely had that keyboard part, the ba da 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 da, which I didn't realize at the time, but I later realized when we learned Love Song and played that at a friend's wedding. I was like, holy shit, this is like almost the same exact chords as Love Song. Like, fuck it. But I think we had that. I think we got to that point somehow organically, and then we started.
And then
to
we were just
build
like,
it,
okay, let's save that for the end, because I kind of remember it being there from the beginning, or like going into that twice, and then just like build it up, bring it back down, build it up really high, and then.
I think the idea of it being about eating dirt was already kind of there at that point too.
Yeah.
So as far as the composition goes, the idea was to try to employ the electronic element of just adding and subtracting versus trying to write a bunch of different parts.
Yeah.
And we wanted to make something that we'd never done before. That was like more
Right.
pop oriented.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times it's like we're trying to make something that kind of sounds punk, but we're not really as punk as all the punks, and then we're not as pop as all the pops. So we just gave a stab, and that's what we got out of it.
Yeah.
It's a very cool song,
Yeah.
and the video is an excellent accompaniment to it.
you.
We'll have to link all the videos so people can listen to the record and check out the videos. So let's move on. We're almost getting to the end here. Track 13, Rites of Spring. This one struck me right away. Talk to me about this. Is the most chill point?
Yeah.
How do you balance when you're going to chill when you've got this whole body of bangers and this type pop song thing and all this stuff is kicking so well, but then we want to do something very chill here.
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to sort of like the folky influence and that sort of aesthetic, sort of tying everything together, because that is how we tie albums together, I think, is kind of like more with aesthetics than sounds, because we use a lot of sounds and we go in a lot of different directions in terms of like pulling from genres or whatever. But we can usually tie everything together either with like a message or with like an aesthetic. And this time around, we kind of had that visually in mind. And yeah, and that was just calling to me. Like, I'm a big fan of like Penguin Cafe Orchestra and like English folk music in general. And I just really wanted to have something like that. And that song came from there's a band like jazz trio called Chances that are really cool, and they're from Tampa, or no, they're from St. Pete. And I saw on their story that they were selling a chord organ, like Hammond chord organ, and I was like, I love organs. I have another organ at home that I bought from Goodwill for $20, and they said it didn't work, and then like I spent 5 seconds with it, and then it worked, and
Yes.
yeah, so it's just like I'm a keyboard fanatic. I like old organs and stuff, so I messaged the guy, went up and borrowed a trailer and brought it back, and was messing around with it, and it's kind of cool because you can do so many more things on that than you normally would be able to. So that song is really like mostly just that chord organ, because you can play the chords with your left hand with the little buttons, you can play the melody with your right hand on the keys, and then you can play the bass line with your feet. And so I was just messing around with that at home, came up with that bit, and I was like, that's it. Like that's what I think that last piece should be. And nobody in the band really heard it, I don't think, until we went in and did it. I was just like, trust me, trust me. I think I got something for this. Like we knew for a while at that point that we were going to have like kind of like a chill folky moment there. And I just found it on that organ like the first day of having it, and was like, okay, like just, we got it. Trust me.
That's
and
so cool.
We brought it up to the studio, and it gets out of tune when you travel with it, you know? So the whole song is like 30 cents out of tune. So
I was
we
going to
couldn't
say you got to tune everything to it.
we couldn't tune anything to it. Like we didn't, you know, like, so it's just like, it's very strange sounding, like, and you know, like everything on it, there's a harmonium and a dulcimer and a, this strange 10-string guitar called like a viola braghesa.
Yep.
That our friend Jaron played, because I just knew that Jaron has a bunch of strange instruments and he would really fill that out. So he came by, he brought his strange instruments and did some stuff, but they're all so weird that they didn't really need to be too tuned to the organ.
Right.
And yeah, it was just like very, very natural. That one came together really, really quick. It was kind of one of those like, Spencer, I know you're tired, but like, can we just do this real quick? And yeah, I really, really like that song because it was just like kind of serendipitous, and it's just so different from what we usually do.
Right.
And that's the one song that I was referencing earlier. Like, if there's a single song that we've ever done that didn't come from jamming in the garage, that was the only one, like, ever.
It's an interesting piece. I guess, how much do you feel like that had to be there to get into the last track, The Long Game?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all kind of knew,
Yeah.
because like I was saying earlier, we mapped the album out on a whiteboard like pretty early into it, and kind of knew roughly where we wanted to go. Like, we knew we wanted some more electronic elements to tie into the sort of like jungle drum and bass feel. We knew we wanted some folkier elements, because that's just where our minds were at aesthetically.
Polar opposites there.
Yeah. And I think we just knew that towards the end of the album, we were leaning more that way, and we needed something that just was that all the way, you know. Like, we had, I think Dirt Opera or Dulling a Tongue was maybe more like that electronic element taken all the way.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, like, we didn't want to just be, or maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but I think that just being kind of in the middle of everything, you don't have as much room to explore. Like, it's kind of nice to just say, like, what does it sound like when we take ourselves all the way here?
Right.
We mix a lot of things a lot of times, but when we take ourselves all the way somewhere, we find ourselves somewhere new.
Would you say that this record was the first time you really gave yourself the latitude to do that?
Yeah, I think so. I think, like, because, yeah, like trying to write a song with like a techno structure, we've never really
we never
done.
would've done that.
Doing a song with all just acoustic instruments and an organ, we've obviously never done anything like that before. It's interesting because in giving ourselves like parameters, like we wanted to write like a pop album or whatever of verses and choruses and stuff like that, we still managed to like explore
find
as much.
weird-
I was going to
than
say
ever before.
it doesn't reek of parameters. So then let's just bring it on home to the last track, The Long Game. The very first thing I wanted to ask you, you kind of touched on when we first started talking. How is it that you ended up with the title track, the last track on the album? That's generally uncommon.
Yeah, maybe that is how.
Yeah, I think we wanted to have the title track be the first one, but kind of just decided the other bookend made more sense.
Yeah. Yeah, we wrote those songs in the same day, Black Sheep and The Long Game, and it was funny because like it was just a really strange day because it was probably after work too and everything, and we got Black Sheep down, and that one, it just fell out how it started, but then it took a little while to get all the parts together under our fingers and stuff and sort of figure out where it was going, and yeah, it was probably like 9 o'clock, 9:30, and we were just like, all right, that's usually when we'll call a practice if we've got a full song done by 9:30 and it's a great song. We're usually like, all right, and for whatever reason, we were like, let's try and get another, and that one just came immediately.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it was like the polar opposite, and it really, we knew it was the closer, and we knew it was The Long Game. We didn't know the album was The Long Game yet, I don't think. We knew that was the closer, and we knew that was The Long Game, and we just thought, like, well, that song we did an hour ago is definitely not going to be the title track, but what about this one? So,
What about it do you think gave you made those instincts rise, that this was going to be the closer, even though you didn't know that it was the title track or anything like that?
Just felt a lot more intimate.
Yeah.
yeah, it felt like it had a aura of finality to it, maybe.
It's like a punctuation mark. Like it's and it's also kind of like, I don't know. To me, it reminds me of like the title card at the end of a movie before the credits roll. And like, so that just pops up, The Long Game, credits go, and that's the song playing. But yeah, it's just like, it just has a vibe that isn't on the rest of the album, because it's like it sounds kind of like everybody's just in a circle around you playing those instruments if you listen to the song.
Right, yeah.
And it's very chill and laid back, but also very like thoughtful, and it's just, to me, kind of the mission statement of the whole thing.
Yeah, like it's like Sawyer was saying earlier about Black Sheep, how it had a lot of what you're going to hear on the rest of the album at the front, Like it had strange instruments, it had acoustic stuff, it had synths and keyboards, and it had saxophone.
Right.
It had like all of that stuff in the first song, just like here's what you're gonna get.
Right.
And then the last one almost feels like a mirror of that in a way, like we've taken you through all of this, you've seen all of what this album kind of is, and let's just sort of like leave you on what it means.
Nice. I think it did that, and it's funny you should say that because now I'm reliving my own listening experiences. That's a really poignant way to put it. I think that's a smart way to button up an album. But I want to ask a couple little nerdy aside questions about this one. The first one for Taylor, the fretless bass.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the choice to play the fretless bass in that one, and writing that line, because it's a killer bass performance.
It needed it. Like, there's some points where we're at a practice and one of you will say, like, we need fretless bass on this. And 99% of the time, you guys are absolutely right. But,
I want to pull up the 1% where we were wrong. I want to hear that right now.
Yeah, I think
all right, 100%. Okay.
No, I want to hear the 1%. Sounds so interesting.
Oh my God.
Sorry.
So it's sort of, I guess, my way of not playing it upright because it has that woody sound to it.
Big time.
If we're going to have this ending that's very folk and very it's something that as part of like us all together, it sounds like we're all just performing at like a campfire, and it's very intimate.
Yeah.
And just having electric bass with frets, I don't think would give it that vibe, because like I have a bunch of different ones, but nothing sounds like that fretless.
No fretlesses even sound like that. That's a custom made instrument by our friend. Our friend made that when he was like 16. He was getting into luthiery a bit.
Nice.
And then it was sitting in my house for a while, Sawyer and I's house, and we ripped out the frets because we were just like, we were just like, you know, he didn't know he was making a fretless bass at the time, but he was making a fretless bass. Like, this thing needs to have no frets.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we ripped out the frets, and we didn't really give it an epoxy glaze or anything, so it really keeps that wooden sound without getting too much into the bright 80s kind of sound.
Yeah.
And also
it's very mellow.
Yeah. And it also gives us a chance to like flip the dynamic a little bit. Like we were talking about the bus driver minigunner kind of dynamic.
Oh, yeah.
That allows, especially in a song like that where, you know, like the instrumental is kind of just like chords on the guitar and stuff like that, which is not what we do a lot of the times, and that frees Taylor up to be the minigunner.
Yeah, it gives me like, you guys are the structure, and I'm allowed to do the little things that sort of like Jacob Pistorius would say, like the like frets on a bass are like just speed bumps.
Right.
Just not having any of those just allows for the freedom to have something that sounds different, sounds unique, allows you to have that sort of that, just the sound you need for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really a poignant voice at that point in the album. You know, that's why I wanted to ask about it, because I very much enjoy the playing, but the tone of it and everything seemed very purposeful.
Yes.
And that brings me to the next thing that I noticed a different. Your singing in that track. Your singing in that track seems to be more, I don't know what, very different, very different from the rest of it.
Yeah.
It struck me as very different.
Yeah.
Was that a deliberate choice like the fretless bass, or was just a matter of instinct and that's the way the sound came out?
No, it was a deliberate choice. honestly, it's kind of how I had hoped. Well, yeah, it's kind of how I had envisioned going into this album a little bit, and I think I did achieve what I was hoping for on a lot of the songs. And yeah, like there were songs where I still like screamed, like Black Sheep a little bit, and Dulling, and just because those kind of needed it. Dulling, we actually re-recorded the vocals because I didn't like the first vocal take, and I was fucking around. I was trying to get everybody to do, like, I was adding background vocals for everyone to do, and nobody liked it.
That wasn't the answer.
Yeah, it wasn't the answer. And somebody was just like, just scream everything and see how that goes. And yeah. But generally, overall, I really wanted to just sing more, and not do the Talking Heads post-punk talk yell thing, and not do the scream thing, but just like sing notes.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, I don't know, it's just so fun to do that, and it's difficult. It's like, I mean, for me at least, it's a challenge, and I really wanted to do that more on this record. I felt like this record called for it, and yeah, like Rites of Spring, I felt like I got that a little bit too in those harmonies in Flower in the Weeds.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think on the back half of the record, I really got to explore doing that more, and that was really encouraging. I liked that a lot. And yeah, like singing just that whole bit in falsetto, like I've always liked singing in falsetto. In our old band, I only pretty much sang in falsetto over whatever Sawyer was doing, and so yeah, it just felt good to do that.
It felt good to listen to. It was a very good. It really tied the room together at the end.
Thanks.
So this is the one I can get you guys out of here on, and then if there's anything I missed, please feel free to circle back and tell me. But you've made a hell of a piece of music. You made a real album at a time when making a real album is not something everybody's doing. So I applaud you very much for that. Just as a total aside, I loved listening to it. I love that you guys are out there making records, doing your thing, involving other people, staying open-minded. Everything about this record really left me as a listener feeling like I got something out of the deal. So I want to thank you for that. But I'm curious what you guys want listeners to take away, or when you finish this and you heard it all for the first time, what were you thinking you really hope people take away from this when they hear it?
I guess I hope that it makes someone feel the full spectrum of emotions, and that's something that maybe feels disorganized sometimes. If you have an album where you're trying to say everything, you're trying to do everything, I hope that we got it all across to a listener. Happy, sad, mad, playful, all of it.
Very cool.
Yeah, I think I really just hope people feel something. I know that's like silly, I guess, but yeah, I don't know. I'm at a point in my life right now where I'm kind of over a lot of music that tries to be, or like all it's really trying to do is be really clever.
Right.
Or, I don't know. I'm at a point in my life where I just want to hear things that make me feel things.
Amen to that.
Yeah, and I just want people to come away from this feeling something.
I'd love people to really take the time to digest it. Not just listen to one track or just the singles. Listen to the album. And if you like it, listen to it many times. There's still, like, there's so many records out there that have little things in them that you don't notice on your first listen. And, like, whether it's in the mix or it's, like, I like to think of, like, the like, More Than a Feeling from Boston. If you really listen to it, when it's playing that do 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 do, Brad Delson, the singer, is also singing that in the harmony, in like a falsetto, and it's barely there, but you can hear it.
Isn't Brad Delson Linkin Park's guitar player's name?
Brad Delson is Linkin Park's guitar player. What am I talking about?
But yeah, I mean, there's so much, and that stuff means a lot to us. The little because everything's a story, you know. Like there's just a little story aside. There was a guitar in the first track in Black Sheep, and it's so apparent where it is, and it's slathered in reverb and stuff. But it's in that little middle section, and there's a engineer who works at the studio named Steven or Clark or Sven. He has a lot of names. And he always pops his head in to see what we're doing every time we're there. And I got to talking to him about a guitar that I bought from Sawyer's Lawn Guy that had no frets in it. And
Guitar from the Lawn Guy for the win.
Yeah, it was. I gave him $50. It was all beat up and had no frets.
Awesome.
And I was just like, I'm just going to sand it down and I'll just have a fretless 12-string guitar. And I was telling Sven this, and he was just like, oh, that's cool. And then the next time we came in, he was like, I got something I think you'll like. He took the frets out of his nylon guitar just because he liked the idea of like having a silly guitar with no frets, and we used it. And there's a fretless nylon guitar in the first song, and there's a moment like that in every song.
That's awesome. Well, I actually just asked another group this, and I'll ask you guys. When you're writing things and recording things and putting this package together, how much of this stuff are you, maybe hoping is the wrong way to put it, but how much of this stuff are you hoping that people won't get on the first try? That some of this will be Easter eggs on the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 10th listen? Mm-hmm. Is that something you're conscious of when you're writing it, or something that just happens?
I don't think I'm too conscious of that. I don't think so.
I think, like, if there's anything little like that, you're probably more thinking that in the studio. Like, there was some keyboard stuff that I did that I don't remember doing, if I'm being honest. But
I was telling you the other day, I was like, those make the song, and you were like, I don't think I played on that.
Yeah. But I hope people hear those and think about them and pick them out and can tell it's, like, something else going on in there. Yeah.
I would say it's really important to me. I think that like that was one little thing that I would spill, but I don't want to give all that away.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
the Easter eggs got to be found.
And it doesn't even need to be such like a hidden-ish thing like that. Like, there are songs where I've listened to this song my whole life, like songs where I'm hearing them like a million times, and it's like by my favorite band, and then I'll go back and listen, and I'm like, there's a whole vocal harmony here on the lead vocal that I didn't even notice, and it's not even quiet. Like, what?
It's weird how our brains are like that when you're hearing things.
Yeah. And I do think we make records that we want people to have that experience with down the road. Like, we intentionally, I think, make records that don't just have like 4 or 5 things going on. And there's records where there's 4 or 5 things going on that are amazing. There's records where there's 1 or 2 things that are going on that are amazing. But I think the records that I gravitate towards personally, at least, are the ones where I'm still picking stuff out, even though it's like from my favorite band.
Right. Well, William, you're the last one. What are you hoping people take away from this one when they listen to it, when they make it front to back?
I think I'd like for people to just come away with the idea that, like, you're not done yet. Like, I don't know, there's stuff to look forward to, I guess. Like, just coming out of these hurricanes, it's like you're not beaten. You'll be okay. Like,
this
that
is the
kind of
long
vibe.
game.
Yeah, it's the long game. You got to just keep playing, you know. And it sucks sometimes, but play the long game, baby.
Hell yes. That's so good, man. I'm so thankful we got to do this. I cannot wait for people to hear this record. I feel like I got like early Christmas getting to hear it. So Taylor, Z, Sawyer, William, well fucking done. Congratulations on this record.
So
I cannot wait for people to hear it, and we can't wait to have you guys back, of course.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Anytime.
for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
Always
you.
fun.
It sounds like you've had the experience with this that we could only hoped that one person would have.
Yeah.
So,
Well, good.
Yeah,
I'm in.
so
I'm in.
it's
yeah, so
usually-
Yeah.
we're just stoked on that.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.